Welcome to Uncontained, episode 152. I'm your host, Aaron Static Render, and on the show today, I speak with Drew Ackerman, better known to some of his fans as Dearest Scooter. That's right, I have the host of the podcast Sleep With Me on the show today that helps put people to sleep. And in my opinion, that's one of the greatest show names ever, just because of, the double entendre thrown into it, and it grabs people's attention. And he has gotten some major accolades recently with his show, winning the best podcast in the health and fitness genre on iHeartRadio. HBO's Vice just recently featured him doing a live episode of Sleep With Me, and definitely want to check that one out if you haven't. And if you are in the Bay Area, we also talk about him doing live shows that you can attend, whether it's a chair or a blanket on the floor. The only catch is you cannot shame anybody for snoring. We'll get into that. Hopefully if you're a listener of Scooters, in this episode, his voice won't put you to sleep, but this is one of the only episodes of Uncontained that I think I'll let it slide this time just because, of conditioning. But on the contrary to putting you to sleep, I think this is a very exciting episode. Getting to talk to him, catch up with him, because I had him on way back on episode 21, and he's come a long way since then. I won't keep you waiting any longer. You're on the edge of your chairs or the edge of your beds with anticipation, I'm sure. Plug in your earbuds. This is how Drew Ackerman, A.K.A. Dearest Scooter, lives uncontained.
The host of a top 50 podcast in the world. And that's what I'm going by anyway. I don't know if it's exactly true.
I'll take it. I don't know if it's true, but I'll take it.
That's what I heard. And, if you see it on the internet, it's true. Sleep With Me. Drew Ackerman, also known as Dearest Scooter. Which one do you want me to call you during this interview?
Actually, you know me as Drew, so you might as well call me Drew. We could slip in and out of character roles if we need to.
Okay.
But thank you for having me on once again. It's been a little while.
It has been, man. You were back on episode 21, and the thing is, I think that the time in your podcasting time frame when you came on last time, you said it was about 2 3/4 years, something like that, as you came on my show. I'm just about to 3 years right now.
Wow, congratulations. It really is a big deal. There's so few shows make it 3 years, so that's a big deal.
Yeah, at the end of February, it will be 3 years. And I honestly won't have my first show actual birthday until the next year because I started on Leap Day.
Oh. That's bad timing.
Well, I just figured, what better time to jump into than on Leap Day of all days. Yeah. So, man, since I talked to you last, you have had a lot happen. Shortly after I released the podcast, and I'm not going to take all the credit for it, but, you were on the podcast before I heard this. So
you worked the magic.
I was listening to Tim Ferris, and he had comedian Mike Birbiglia on. And everybody knows him, that he has some sleep issues. He has a movie called Walk With Me, and serious, insomnia and sleepwalking problems. And when Tim Ferris asked him what he does for that, he mentioned you and your show. He's like, I listened to this show called Sleep With Me. And at that time, my jaw just dropped. I was like, oh my God, that is awesome.
Yeah, mine did too. It was funny because I didn't expect it. I knew he was aware of my podcast because he had made a joke one time and he included me in it where he's like, man, you have the best thing going. You should start doing live shows. You could put everybody to sleep and then just take all their wallets and money and leave. and so we had a pleasant exchange on Twitter. I've always been a fan of his, and I was like, oh, he's come across the podcast, but I didn't really think he listened. And then I was like, holy cow! And especially he was a new parent. He just had that show on Broadway, a new one just concluded when we're recording this about kind of being a new parent and stuff. So it was really cool. It was nice.
So when you get recognition like that, Like, say after Mike Birbiglia mentions your name on one of the bigger podcasts, Tim Ferris, like, did you see like a big spike in listeners at that point, or what was that like following that?
It wasn't. It was more of like a cool thing, and it was cool to be recognized. I don't know if it actually had a real impact on people checking the podcast out. It more just felt good. It felt good. Like, I think like it taught me this lesson that I've been carrying forward. I've been trying to carry forward in my podcasts, especially online. Is like, if you're really pleasant with people and you're kind of like being nice to them, like sometimes there's like this karma that comes around. And I think it was like, I mean, this, I can't speak for Mike because I don't know him, but I look up to him, and that just by like saying thank you, that he included me in a joke and he was aware of me, and then I was like going out of my way to kind of put that karma back, and when his movie came out, be like trying to get people out to go to that movie. Like, I don't know. I kind of feel like it was just this karmic thing. I think like with podcasting, even now for me, it's like, oh, if that brought me like 2 or 3 new listeners, that's like the real growth that's been sustaining my show, is just getting those few people in the door that are going to stick around and become fans and spread the word.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. So when you say Mike Birbiglia made a joke, just one more question on that. Was it during one of his shows, like one of his specials or something that he made a joke on, or was it just like a Twitter or Instagram joke?
Yeah, it's just a Twitter joke, which but for someone that big to like tag you in a Twitter joke, it's like, holy cow. Like, I was speechless, especially someone like, I don't think I've told this story anywhere publicly before. So
I like those.
Yeah. So I remember when I was first starting the podcast out, I was going to therapy, right? And let me just double check my therapist isn't in the restaurant. And
I think you're good.
I remember he wasn't really aware of what a podcast was. He was calling it a blogcast, and then most of the time when you go to therapy, it's pretty straightforward that it's your time and it's about you, and the therapist isn't kind of supposed to change the focus off you. And I was at this one therapy session, and we were like 5 minutes in, and he said, "Geez, I'm sorry, I'm really distracted, and I have to take a break." Like, he goes, "I can't stop thinking about this movie I saw," and he goes, "I saw this movie called Sleepwalk with me," and he goes, "The character," he was telling me about the movie, and he's like, "Hey, you got," and I was like, "Oh yeah, I saw it," and he goes, "Hey," he goes, "something about it reminded me of you," and I was like, "Yeah," and I was like, "All right," like, so I guess we've been tied even before that to cosmically be together. Is that I was like, "Wait, isn't this my time? Like, am I paying you for this movie recommendation?"
It's like, okay, so I'm going to therapy and I'm walking you through your problems.
Right.
What is that sign? Can I get a refund?
Right.
So in our first episode, you mentioned that as you were a kid, you had problems sleeping, dreading like school the next day or anything like that. Do you still have those sleep issues?
I guess I so like when I was a kid, I couldn't sleep, and I had a lot of trouble sleeping, a lot of anxiety-related sleep issues. Now as an adult, I kind of have a bedtime routine, and when I stick to it, it normally works like 60 or 70% of the time.
Okay.
But then there's still nights like this week I haven't been sleeping good, where it's just like I can't fall asleep, and I don't even know why. Like it's like sometimes my mind isn't even racing. It's just a matter of like, I'm tired, I close my eyes, I can't fall asleep, or I'm tired, I fall asleep for like 5 minutes and I wake back up, which is good in some it's not good for me, but it's good in some sense because it keeps me close to my podcast. Like, I think it's like it's almost like even though it's a natural thing, it would be a job hazard if I slept good all the time.
Yeah. Like, okay, so I'm sure you get asked this all the time. Do you listen to your own podcast when you can't sleep?
I don't. So, like, I'll listen. Sometimes I'm listening to it at bedtime because I'll get, like, a message from somebody and they'll ask me, like, "Hey, did you talk about sassafras in the latest episode?" And then I'm like, "I don't remember. I don't even know what sassafras is. Let me look that up." And then I'll be listening to the show and trying to figure out what they're referencing. But I used to fall asleep when I was editing my podcast, so I know you edit your own show.
I've done that too.
Yeah, and like, especially at work, at when I'd be on lunch breaks. When I first couple of years of making the podcast, I'd like eat my lunch at my desk, and I'd take my lunch break, and I'd just be like trying to edit the show, and it'd be warm. And then a lot of times I was in an unair conditioned room, so it's hot, and I'm trying to focus on this talking and going on, and then trying to cut out like unnecessary pauses and stuff like that, and I could not keep my eyes awake, like so it's put me to sleep at just not at convenient times.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking, knowing what it's like editing podcasts and stuff like that, I was thinking the irony that the podcast itself meant to put people to sleep keeps you up.
Yeah.
Like editing, you're like, I'm losing sleep putting this out so others can go to sleep.
Yeah. If you're a regular podcast listener, don't listen to this part. But yeah, I definitely put a lot into the show, and I do put like it has kind of taught me like some good boundaries, but sometimes I still get really stressed and really worried about it, and then I'll lose sleep. But I try to maintain a healthy routine.
So like for podcasters like myself that sometimes lose sleep trying to post the show, finishing up little finishing touches and stuff like that, like what are some of your boundaries that you establish for yourself?
Let's see. What are some? I mean, I try to like not worry too much about the things that are out of my control. Unfortunately, like a lot of that stuff's under our control. So that kind of stuff isn't as good. But like worrying about if someone like some listeners upset about something, or someone that doesn't listen to podcasts is like trolling me, or what's the future of podcasting, or how am I going to keep doing this, or oh no, like that kind of stuff. I try to keep myself, at least I try to contain that to a portion of the day.
Okay.
But yeah, even now, I have a couple people that help out on the show editing, and I'll still be posting my shows. Like I'll still be doing the final mix, like pretty close to when it's good due. Though I have found, for me at least, deadlines really have helped me like stay productive and stuff, but there's a lot of times I'm right up against that deadline even now.
Yeah, because I do remember like during the first episode we were talking, you were like, sometimes like before podcasting at least, you would not always see stuff through.
Right.
Like, and like you'd write something and not quite do the rewrite and stuff like that, and now podcasting has helped. Like, I've been that way as well. Like there's so many times where I like almost started my podcast,
right? Same here.
Or like almost got up on stage to do stand-up comedy, and that's kind of where I am for that right now. Almost getting up on stage. I'm writing stuff, but it's like, have you found that the podcast has helped you follow through with things? Have you found maybe your listeners depending on or relying on your show to fall asleep has helped you be like, okay, I gotta stick with this and get this out, so don't have a bunch of zombies on Monday morning?
So I think it's an interesting question, especially when you're talking about the public performance side of it. So I think the podcast has taught me that if you try to stick to stuff and make it on a deadline and do the best you can, usually that's kind of all you can control. And by doing that, like you can keep producing stuff and you're accountable to the audience. But at the same time, like in the past, actually just over a year ago, like I'd been hearing a lot about people doing podcasts live and live performances of their podcasts. And that same voice in me that, caused me to delay starting my podcast, it kind of sounds familiar, was like, oh, no, we can't do a live version. Like, what would a live version of Sleep With Me be? And you don't have any, you're not a live performer, you can't do it, and that kind of thing. And then about 12 or 13 months ago, I did one live show at a podcast conference in Seattle, and I was like super terrified, like leading up to it. Like the day of the show, like the show went pretty good. Like I kind of was like a work in progress.
Yeah.
But podcast listeners, for the most part, are really generous, and they're excited to kind of see how the podcast gets made and stuff like that. So that show went good, but it kind of took a lot out of me. And I'm like, the people at the show were like, oh yeah, you got to keep doing it. Like keep refining the show. Just keep going. And I did one more performance like a couple months later. And then I kind of was so kind of overthinking it and nervous and stressed about it that I like put it on the back burner. And I was like, oh, one day I'll start doing that live podcast again. And then I remember a couple people from the first show reconnected, and they're like, "So are you going to be doing those live shows? Like, are you still working on that? Are you going to get going on that?" And I was totally BSing them. I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm totally like." I mean, I had been doing some writing and stuff, but I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm totally getting that scheduled, and I'm really working on it." And they kind of saw right through it. They're like, "Well, you really should get going on it. Like, you really like, there's no time to start." Like, and I remember I was just really like scared. Like, and it's weird because I'd been making a podcast for like 4 years. It was going pretty well, but this other part of me was just like, "You will like that." I don't know if it's a little kid and a critic combined into one. But like, you won't do this. You can't. It's just not possible for you to do a live podcast. You're not equipped to do it. It won't be good. Sometimes it's not even about thinking, oh, it'll be embarrassing, or oh, no one will come. It's more like, no, we're just not going to do that. Just forget that idea. And I ended up like I was at this place where I live in Alameda. That's like a co-working space, and I remember I was in there. Just kind of seeing their prices, and the owner was there, and I just happened to ask him, like, I knew they had done like some other performances and stuff, and I was like, "Just I have this podcast, like, how much would you charge, like, if I wanted to do like a live version, like how much would you charge me to rent it out?" And he was kind of like, "Well, like, do you know how many people will show up?" And I was like, "No, I don't know." And he was like, "Okay." He goes like, he gave me a really, really fair price, and I started doing a show, it started this summer in July, like just doing one every single month. And it was again, like almost like starting the podcast. Like at first I was like, I'd do a show and I was like, oh, I can't ever do that again. And then, I've done a couple shows and I haven't promoted them well. And it's been really, really, really really sparse attendance. And then it's kind of like, and then I was like, oh, am I self-sabotaging, like not promoting the show good enough so only 2 or 3 people show up, like, so then I'm going to give me an excuse to quit. But I've just kind of tried to keep at it, and it's really kind of brought me back to like starting the podcast and just like keep going slow and steady, but it's still kind of something that makes me nervous and scared and stuff like that, but it's definitely been good. It's taught me some new skills, and it's taught me that promoting live shows and promoting podcasts is kind of 2 different things too.
I can see that. And, it'd be interesting to do a live show of Uncontained at some point. But, yeah, it's like how do you get the people there? One aspect of it that I thought to do, like, since I interview comics and stuff like that, maybe have, like, a comedy show and interview, like, the headliner before he goes up on stage. Like, sit down, have a talk with him before, then be like, okay, now see your headliner. That's kind of a thought that's been running in my head the last couple weeks and stuff. But, it's the execution of it. Got to get that taken care of and stuff. But, so I guess I'm bringing it back to you here. What can people expect when they go to a live Sleep With Me show? Like, what are you curled up on the ground with blankets? Are you in, like, lazy boys? Are you, like, do you have to wake people up afterwards? Or
these are very good questions. Like? These are legitimate questions. So I do sell two kinds of tickets. I sell tickets in a chair and floor seats, which actually mean bring your own blanket and pillow. And so some listeners will come and they'll just bring like a yoga mat and a blanket and they'll lie on the floor. And then some listeners will just sit in a chair. I have reached out to a couple beanbag companies that have not got back to me because I was like, oh, this would be a great way to cross promote. At the first show I did, I sold inflatable bed tickets, like 2 spots in a bed for $50. But it ended up someone from out of town bought those tickets as a like gag. So then I was like, okay, that didn't quite work out.
Yeah.
Or no, they bought it for somebody else that couldn't make it. That's what it was. I don't know. It's kind of been an experience. It is like me telling a bedtime story. It is a little bit more engaging than the podcast, but for the most part, like people go and some people will fall asleep. Some people will kind of just chill out. And that as a performer has really been hard. Like going back to the first show I ever did, I remember it was in this convention center, and there was these 2 bikers, these guys in like biker vests and leather hats and everything, and they were really big guys, and they were with one woman was sitting between them, and the whole show they were just staring at me and glaring, and I'm trying to do this lulling, soothing story, and they're just like staring at me the whole time. I'm like, these guys must have been like, they must not wanted to go to the show. Like they must have been forced to go or something. And then after the show, they're waiting for me, and they have these big smiles on their faces, and they're like, "That was awesome." And I was like, well, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we were just in the zone, man. Like we were just staring at you because we were totally in the zone." And I was like, "Oh." And I've experienced that over and over again. It's like sometimes people will make these faces when they're just chilling out with their eyes are open, and they're just like, a lot of people glare, I guess, when they're relaxed. So
it's kind of like the equivalent of resting bitch face.
Yeah, it's like a chilling angst face or something. But yeah, so it's a lot of like relaxing, no snore shaming allowed. That's one rule. And then I had to learn, as you mentioned, like, well, do people fall asleep? Do I have to wake them back up? In the first couple shows, I took audience feedback after the show ended, and someone was like, yeah, the show ends too abruptly because we're all like in this weird zone, and then you kind of shift gears to the real world. So now I take about 5 minutes and I like slowly go from like slowly ease people back into reality. Yeah, to make it a little less jarring.
That's interesting, man. So how do you like switch from sleep mode to alarm clock mode gracefully anyway?
I think I'm still learning. Like usually I'll like either kind of do a recap of the show, or if there's time, like I like to do like a little audience Q&A. So I'll answer like common questions I get, like maybe, oh, do you fall asleep to your own podcast? Yeah. Or what's your favorite podcast episode? So yeah, just kind of like I still haven't got it down, I guess. It's interesting because you're looking out, and then some people are like out cold, like wrapped or curled up, and I'm like, okay, how do I wake this person back up? Because we got about 15 more minutes of time on the clock in this building, and we got to get out of here.
And then the janitor's going to be hitting him with the broom.
Right.
Get up, wake up, time to go. Learning how to transition and not wake up abruptly. If anything, I'm kind of picturing like when you're coming out of meditation or something like that. And it's like, all right, now you feel like life coming back into you. You know, you're opening your eyes, you're feeling more awake, and all of that stuff. That's kind of what I'm envisioning.
This is good. This is like brainstorming now, because I'm picturing, yeah, maybe I could tell them to start tapping their feet or that's good. I like that.
And have like a calm gong sound, like a bong, not like a harsh gong, but like one that just kind of vibrates to like meditation. I don't know.
I've always wanted my own gong, so this is a dream.
And now you can write it off.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the Sleep With Me alarm clock.
Yeah.
All right, so those shows, those Sleep With Me live shows, they've gotten you some attention apparently, because you were just recently featured on Vice on HBO, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So how did that come about? Did they find that you did live shows and come to you, or how did you end up getting that all lined up and worked out?
You know, I don't have the exact, like, I only, like, a lot of stuff I have to, like, kind of guess how it came about. Like, originally, someone from Vice reached out through a publicist I work with, and they said, oh, like, we really are interested in the show. We really like the show. And it felt like the person reaching out, like, either a listener or a friend of a listener or something, like a real big fan. And then it was, like, a matter of, well, what would be interesting and make it in visual about your podcast? Because it is mostly me writing the podcast and recording it in a closet. Yeah. So it's not super visual. So we were kind of like it's like, oh, what else are you doing that might be interesting and visual that would make for a good news story and kind of relate information about the podcast? And I think some time passed. Then I was like, well, I'm doing these live shows. Like, maybe you could come tape a live show. And now the critic in me was like, what are you thinking? You're going to have this recorded on TV now? But yeah, it was just enough of an interesting twist that it got them interested. And yeah, they came out and they shot the live show and they filmed me recording and stuff like that. And it being really nice. I think it was cool that they got like listeners like on the show to kind of give their perspective. It was a really nice piece.
Really cool, man. I haven't had a chance to see that yet because, well, I don't have HBO. But hopefully I'll be able to find it online sometime or somewhere, or or you could send a link my way. 'Cause I'd really love to check that out. I want to see what a live Sleep With Me show is like. Do you have any dates coming up? Like if you're is it all in the Bay Area here?
Yeah, right now I'm doing a monthly show in Alameda, and it's every second Wednesday. So second Wednesday every month. And if anybody's interested, my website, sleepwithmepodcast.com/live show is like, if you want to check it out.
Okay.
But hopefully, like, I'm hoping it like morphs into something. Like, I'm also curious, like, oh, could I also, if I can build it a little bit more audience-wise to cover like another hour of rental, like, I'm like, oh, could I do it like with an interview segment at the beginning and like bring people like you on and interview you first, and then do a bedtime story afterwards? But I don't quite have it's like a building momentum phase right now of the show.
Definitely. It's good to have like a vision of where you want to go with something. It's awesome that you're starting it and that you're doing it and that, you're starting to gain some steam and then have an idea where you want to go with it. That's really cool, man. And like around what time do you typically do these on like Wednesdays?
Right at 8 o'clock, I think the shows start. That way everybody can be home in bed by like 10,
Okay.
Especially on a Wednesday night. It's people. It's funny. Like there's one woman that she's almost come to every show, and she's a new mom, and she's like, my husband stays home with our child, and this is my night out. And she goes, and she gets super comfortable, and sometimes she falls asleep, but it's like her little escape, her like spa night.
Right on, man. Right on. Well, I just had this idea pop into my head. You should work out something with a hotel. And like in one of their conference rooms or whatever that they have for like big meetings, have that, and then afterwards everybody could go up to the room and go to sleep.
Yeah.
And not have to worry about waking up and driving back home and all that stuff. But you can take it with you straight to your room. All you got to do is make it through an elevator ride.
It would be cool if we could get like rollaway beds, and then the hotel rolls everybody into their rooms. That
would be awesome.
Like we just do the show, and then they're like, if you're asleep, we'll just roll you to your room. Like,
yeah, and have their room number attached to their bed,
right,
just so they get home all right, all that good stuff. Now we're getting somewhere. Getting somewhere. All right, I got one more thing before we move on to my questions at the end of the show here to help podcasters and other entertainers learn more about the entertainment industry, and it's more of another accomplishment of yours, which is really quite awesome. It's the iHeartRadio award for the best podcast in the health genre. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it was health and fitness. Yeah,
health and fitness.
Even though my show's not about my show's about keeping fit, I guess, and self-care. Yeah, so I guess it falls into that.
It falls in there somewhere. Yeah. Work out in your sleep if you Mike Birbiglia.
yeah.
So what all comes along with that, or how did you apply for that, or did you have to submit your podcast to do that, or?
You know what? It was like a total surprise. Like, and it was the cool thing was they were running ads on the radio, and actually I didn't even know about it till the ads started running, and my sister-in-law heard it in her car on the way to work, and she texted me, and she's like, I just heard you're up for this award, and I was like, what? And I'm like Googling it, and then I found out, and the nice thing was they had like listener voting, so it was fun for a lot of my listeners to be able to vote, and then like it was nice that they all took the time to vote for the show, and it paid off. Like that was what really was like heartening to me. It was like these people are taking their time and going online and clicking and to vote for the podcast. So it really is something I feel like I got to win, but it was because of the listeners like supporting the show. So I really feel like they really are the winners. Like, and ideally they keep winning. I keep putting them to sleep, so they could deserve all the credit in the world.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. And when your listeners go out and do it, it's hard to get like an audience motivated to actually go take another step besides just listen to your show. You hear like click and subscribe and rate and review. People are just listening. Oh, yeah, I'll get to that later. Yeah, sure. I'll do that, but never get around to it. But then to actually have them go vote you to win an award through iHeartRadio, that's something, man. I'm happy for you, and I'm proud of what you've accomplished since we've last talked, man.
Thank you.
It's really cool to see people that doing good. That heartwarming moment right here.
My
right?
iHeart warms your heart.
Yeah, exactly. And you just made that cheesy, but I appreciate
Yeah.
it. I appreciate it.
iHeartwarming.
iHeartwarming. Well, yeah, I'll edit that out. All right. So thank you for joining me here tonight. And as I mentioned, I have a second part to the show that is designed to help people who are looking to either get into the entertainment industry or take their next step.
Okay.
So the first question, what advice do you have for people who are looking to get into podcasting?
For podcasting, I think it is something we've kind of talked about together, is like starting and not worrying about being perfect, and also acknowledging it really is hard to start and it really is scary to start. But one of the biggest pluses of the podcast industry is that it's open, unlike radio that has all these standards and it's kind of pretty high gateway to get through. You can make and release a podcast for almost nothing. Like, you're holding a mic. That's a mic I used for the longest time. And you could get a mic for about $35. You could plug it right into your computer if you're just starting out, and then upload it to a host and pay $5 or $10 a month. And your podcast can go out all over the world, like, instantly. And I think it's just a great opportunity to, like, get your voice out there, but also to kind of develop it or find your voice. Like, I'm sure as you've been doing it for 3 years, like, you've probably gained some new confidence and a lot of interview skills and interest skills and curiosity. So it's just a matter of, like, it is a long game. It's hard to start, but if you start doing it and just keep going, like, you're going to get a lot out of it. And the other thing is, like, I don't know how to put this into words. I was just talking to somebody else about this recently. Is like, it doesn't always have to work. Like, sometimes you have to make the thing you make before you make the thing that works. Like, like for me, I had, like we had talked about on the first show, I had, like, been working on writing for a long time and it wasn't working out. Like, I was writing some screenplays and writing some stuff, like shorts for YouTube, and it wasn't it was like I was grinding my gears, and but I had set time aside for that and been committed to it, and then eventually I gave up on it and moved on to making the podcast, and then I've kind of felt like I've followed through more. But I think it is just a matter of starting and seeing how it goes, and also giving yourself permission to be afraid and be like, I don't want to start. Be like, okay, I know you don't want to start, but let's just start anyway. Like trying to find some mental trick to get your foot in that door. Because in this case, especially with the starting of a podcast, like, the biggest obstacle to at least getting a podcast going is just the hesitation of doing it sometimes.
Oh, yeah, no doubt, man. The fear of actually getting started. Yeah, just starting that ball rolling. Once you get it rolling, I'm not going to say that it's easy to keep it going, but, once you have it going, you're like, okay, well, time to put out another episode,
Yeah. Right. You're learning, like, proactive problem-solving skills, coping skills. There's a podcast that starts in March that my friends are making called Start With This. So Start With This.
Okay.
And it's kind of about, not like, podcasts as an art, but that, like, whether you want to write podcasts or you want to make them, but that really the key is just, like, starting, like, and keeping going and making it. So that might be another one people can check out eventually when it starts
starting in March, you say?
Yeah, it starts in March.
Okay. All right. Go ahead and give them a shout out. Who's doing it?
It's the guys that make Welcome to Night Vale, Joseph and Jeffrey, and I know they're going to have guests on and stuff like that. But yeah, it should be really, really cool. And they'll have little assignments, so it'll be like kind of like an interactive, almost like an audio workshop.
Okay, very cool, very cool. And you are on Night Vale Presents, correct?
Yeah, so that's the network my show's at, and it has a lot of great shows. Anybody wants to, like, it's nightvalepresents.com. Like, there's some amazing shows. I just went and saw, like, Dane Terry. He makes this show called Dream Boy, and he's just this phenomenal musician and storyteller. And, like, I enjoyed the podcast, but then seeing him perform live in person, I went from, like, being a fan of his podcast to just my mind was – it was one of those performances where your mind's just absolutely blown. You're like,
yeah.
And so it's also eye-opening as we talk about kind of live performances. It's like, how does that change the audience's relationship with your podcast? Like, so it's another podcast to check out. Really cool one.
Okay, very cool, man. And can you find all of those at Night Vale?
Yeah, NightValePresents.com, or like search in your podcast app Dream Boy, or start with this.
Okay.
Yeah, because everybody's kind of, a lot of different podcast apps out there now.
Yeah, definitely. And most of them have the same stuff on it. They all pull from the same couple places anyway. So I don't think I asked you this one last time you were on. I had like 2-3 questions at the end at the very most. I'll get brand new answers.
All right,
Yes.
lightning round.
Lightning round. Ding, 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 ding. But you don't have to answer quick. What do you do to promote yourself?
So I have this like very simple strategy. Actually, I didn't even realize it was a strategy until I got asked a similar question on a panel of like, how do you promote stuff? Like, how do you get new people to listen to your show? And it's very simple, and it's very effective. I call it the thank you chain.
Yeah.
That's just a gimmicky name I thought of, which is like anytime anyone contacts me on social media at all, I say thank you. Like they say, hey, look, I caught your show, or hey, I heard Mike Birbiglia joked about you, or whatever. Like, or they might say, hey, I heard a comedian have a joke with your podcast. I say, oh, thank you so much. How did you hear about the podcast? Or, oh, who made that joke? Like, and then they normally will say, oh, I heard about it from this person. And then I go to that person and I just say thanks. And I found that, like, as trite and like Pollyanna-ish as that sounds, it actually really works. Like, and it also kind of puts you in the position of promoting other people.
Yeah.
And I found that like one of the hard things about podcasts that you mentioned is that, you know, people are kind of listening. They might be listening on the subway. They might be listening in the car. They might be listening in bed, in my case, or it's hard for them to write stuff down or take action at that time. And it's also hard for them to like share it, know how to share, or even know it's important to share the show like by word of mouth. And by them seeing you kind of doing word of mouth stuff, or like giving them positive feedback and being like interested in how they found out about the show, not only is it like helping promote the show and helping you learn about the show, but it kind of puts you in the position of like seeing, oh wow, it isn't easy to promote stuff. and I don't know, I've just found that like that, and like thanking people that do promote your show, even when it's like there's times when it's slow, like you might only hear from like a person like every few weeks, but man, like say thank you so much for telling people about the podcast or sharing it on your just tweeting about it. Like if a person has like 150 followers and they're tweeting about your show, that's powerful. Like it's easy to diminish that and be like, well, you know, what is, you know, all, like these big people have millions and millions of followers, but I don't know. So that's my tip is say thank you, and who did you hear about it from, so I can thank them.
Okay, as you said, it sounds really simple, but it sounds really powerful at the same time. So that's something that I think I might have to incorporate more. I do try to thank people when they contact me, or at least always acknowledge when they directly contact me and stuff like that. You don't want to be that guy who like, they're like, oh, I sent him a message, but he never replies. He's too big to talk to his fans. It's like, no, don't be that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. The cool thing is if you ask them, though, how they found out about it, like sometimes you're so shocked. You're like it's just cool. Like, and it gives you like a way to, then they might ask you a question back. So it kind of gives you a easy starting way to start interacting with them, too.
There's something that Gary Vaynerchuk said that kind of resonated with me too. He's like, when you're interacting with people on social media, don't let them be the last one to send you a message. You send the last message.
Oh, wow.
Like, so if they send you thank you and they'll be like, yeah, no problem, I really appreciate it, you know, type thing. But leave them feeling satisfied, because you don't want them messaging you and like sitting there like, wait, is it gonna type back? Is he gonna type back? I hope he types back, because you know, you never know how much somebody is into your show. You know, and just that fulfilling them wanting to talk to you, they'll go away happy with that. I'm kind of ad-libbing and putting words in there that Gary Vee didn't necessarily say, but you know, interpreting what he said. So yeah, I try to always, you know, complete the conversation.
Yeah, I like that. I was always in the past like the person that sent too many texts, so that I'm like, but I guess like my personal life and social media are two different things. Like,
Yeah. In personal life, you it's okay.
yeah, okay.
I mean, you're just
I have your
texting
permission
somebody.
now.
Yes. I think Gary V might approve too. I don't know. I'm not speaking
Like,
on behalf
sorry,
of
I'm going
him
to bed. I'm not answering that last text.
I'm not even opening it, so they don't see I saw it. So that is some really good advice right there. The thank you chain, as you refer to it, and basically saying thank you, asking where they heard about the show, and then thanking that person for telling them. That's really cool. I never thought about that last part. So definitely going to have to incorporate the patented scooter thank you chain.
Yeah. It's like a chain letter, but online.
But all full of thank yous.
Yeah.
Those are the kind I don't mind.
Yeah, instead of like send me $5 or whatever those chain
if you don't
letters
say
were.
thank you, you'll have 7 years of bad luck.
Yeah.
And no, screw that shit. I hate those.
Oh yeah, those Facebook ones where it's like, if you care about anything in life, you'll share this post.
Yeah,
like,
or else
delete.
3 Ethiopian children will starve. Like, no, me sharing this post does nothing about that. But I hope they get fed.
Yes.
All right, so what would be a highlight or two, not necessarily the highlight, but a highlight or two that you care to share with the Uncontained audience?
For me, like a big highlight is like hitting those numbers, like hitting 500 episodes, 600 episodes, and 700 episodes are big deals to me. Like those are like, sometimes I'm already working on the next couple episodes, so it'll take me a while. But it really is like, and I mean, even saying it now feels surreal. Like I can remember struggling to make episode 26 or 27 and being like, I'm never going to get to 100 or 150.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like something about like that reminds me like, okay, it is just about keeping going, keeping doing the best job you can. And then just hear, like, it really is like when I hear from listeners and hear their stories. I just saw somebody in person that I met, and I was talking to somebody else, and he was kind of standing like a few feet away, kind of listening in. And I was like, I didn't know if he was like waiting for the other person I was talking to or me. And it was his friend, and he comes over and he says, "Oh wow, you make the Sleep With Me podcast." He goes, "Close." And my dad passed away like this year, and it was really hard. And I just listened to your show to get through it. And those are the real highlights for me, because it's like, man, like I was like, yeah, you don't even know what to say. You're just like, all right, let's hug this out, like, because it's like, but that's really why I make the show.
Yeah, definitely. And what can you say to that besides like bring it in? Let's hug it out. That's probably the best thing you can say, because those are powerful moments, man. Have you ever actually just been recognized by your voice?
So, I don't know if. Okay, so I have two stories about being recognized that are both podcast level boring, but for my podcast, like, there was one time I was sitting on a plane next to somebody, and it was like a long, like 5-hour flight, and he was sitting next to me the whole time, and I was editing podcasts, and that kind of is like interesting looking. So he kept watching me, and I was editing it, and I was like, oh, I wonder if he's going to ask me a question, but I was pretty into it. And then when I got done, I closed my laptop, and I had a sticker for my own podcast on my laptop. And he said, "Did you make that podcast?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Man," I had a similar story, like really rough relationship breakup, and I've been listening to it. And I was just like, holy cow, it's so weird that we got placed next to each other on the plane. And then another time, this is the exciting life of a sleep podcaster. I was at the IKEA cafe because they have, very similar to Costco, like 2 hot dogs and a soda for like $1.50 or something outrageously
like the
cheap.
Swedish meatballs or whatever. Yeah.
So I'm sitting there eating my 2 hot dogs and drinking my soda, and this person comes by with a cart full of IKEA stuff and vases. And as they're walking by, they must recognize me from somewhere, and they turned. And I didn't realize this at the time. I just noticed they were distracted, and they hit this bump, and all the vases fell off and broke.
Oh, no.
And it felt so bad. And then they were trying to clean it up, and then they left the store. And then they came back, and they were like, oh, I listened. That's what I was distracted about. Is that I listened to your podcast, and I was like, oh man, I'm so sorry. Like, and they were like, oh no, thank you so much. Plus, they were like, oh, these are 50-cent vases. You know, it's IKEA. But so those are the only 2 times I think I've been recognized. So it's really exciting. You know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Like, I could almost think people have been so conditioned to fall asleep to your voice, the ones that listen to the podcast sometimes, where they hear you talk, and it's like, oh, for some reason I feel like yawning.
Yeah, I hope. I hope anybody that's listening that listens to my show is enjoying this interview. But a lot of times people say, "I could only make it through half the interview because your voice put me to sleep."
Well, if you fall asleep during this episode of Uncontained, you get a pass. All right, just because, especially if you're a listener to the Sleep With Me podcast, and I'll give you a pass on this one. If you're falling asleep on the other ones, I have to apologize for that. But all right, man. So, and those are some good stories, though. Those are the stories that kind of help keep you going.
Right.
And knowing that you helped affect somebody's life in that way. And I have just a couple more questions for you. I didn't get to ask you this one the first time either because I hadn't come up with it yet. So I'm actually really kind of excited to hear the answer to this one. It could be very simple, but it could be something a little more. But what is it that you hope that your audience takes away and remembers about your podcast?
I hope my audience knows that that I'm there to help, with no expectations on their end of listening or paying attention.
Yeah.
But I really hope what they take away is that I am their. I mean, it's kind of weird in this digital world we live in, and this whole idea of digital intimacy. But so I realize that it is this fraught and strange thing, but that I'm there for them, even though it's this digital utility, to keep them company because I've been there. I mean, that's why I make the shows. I know what it's like to be up at 3 a.m. and to be desperate and to be feeling like you're losing. In my case, it was I don't know how I'm going to make it. I'm losing it. And I know how that feels. And I also know that it's some of it's real, but there's this desperation that happens in the middle of the night when you're alone, that things get magnified and amplified. And so if I can interrupt that process for anybody and just offer them a little bit of fun distraction, I guess in the end, that's what I want. On the show, I say, well, I could be your boyfriend, your boar bae, your boar cuz, your boar sib, your boar bestie, or your Barbara if you're in San Diego.
Barbara.
So, yeah. So I hope the listeners get that. I hope that message comes through.
Awesome, dude. Awesome. And I could have seen you just being like, all I hope they get is a good night's sleep.
Yeah. Okay, I'm a rambler. I'm a born rambler.
It's all good. And I'm sure that comes in handy with the format of your show,
right.
Is your show kind of stream of consciousness a lot, or do you write all of it out?
So I do 3 different style shows. So I'll do a stream of consciousness show. Then I do a written show. So one show would be a stream of consciousness. Then the next episode would be a written story that I've written. And then I'll do TV recap shows where I I'll watch an episode a few times and take pages and pages of notes and then kind of work off those notes. So it's kind of a little bit different. And that keeps a variety for the listeners. If some people don't I don't like a TV recap, they know in a couple nights a different style episode will be coming out.
Okay, very cool, man. I know you've done Game of Thrones,
right?
Star Trek, Breaking Bad too, right?
Yeah, we did Breaking Bad. Right now, just finishing up The Good Place. The season finale comes out tonight, the night we're recording this. So I'm looking forward to that. We'll have another episode, and then it'll be Doctor Who.
Doctor Who.
Yeah,
huh?
Doctor Who's popular.
All right, that could be interesting.
Yeah.
That could be interesting. So I heard you mention earlier that sometimes you get people who the trolls.
Mm-hmm.
You were telling me earlier that you've kind of come up with a way to maybe deal with them a little bit. What do you have for the haters?
Yeah, so there's my show has this weird. It does have this. I don't know. It's a very different show. Even people that are listening to this interview, it's going to be different than you expect. It's very goofy and silly and long and drawn out. And I think some people like go into it listening and expecting something much different.
Yeah.
And they tend to get really upset, and they'll send me, like, I just get these really incensed emails where people kind of tell me how much they dislike my voice. They're using much stronger language than this, or how much they dislike my show, or how I'm doing it wrong. I got one iTunes review that it was the longest review I've ever gotten. It was a 1-star, and it was this person correcting my recap of a Star Trek episode, like line by line.
Oh, wow.
Because I got it so wrong, and I was like, yeah, because I'm trying to put people to sleep, dude. Like not recap the episode. Like, you can watch the episode if you want to know what happened. But so, people get really irritated. So I've decided to start. But there's also people that aren't as aggressive, or irritable, that also the show doesn't work for. Like, they're just looking for something different. They're perfectly pleasant people. So I've got a new thing on my site called, it goes sleepwithmepodcast.com/no thank you. And it'll have some other podcasts people could listen to, things that I like to listen to fall asleep. And if people really hate the show, like, instead of sending me an email, because I've heard it all, like, at this point, is like a donation link so that if they want to really give me an FU and really stick it to me, they could donate money. And I promise to, like, cry myself to sleep or something if they're out there
donate
helping.
money to sleep with me.
No, they'll donate money to a cause.
Okay,
to a nonprofit. And,
okay, all right. I was like, that's a nice little trick right there.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that.
If you hate me, give me money.
Yeah, they'll give their money to some sleep-related nonprofits, and like, that is a really way to stick to me, really, really hurt me, like, by helping someone else, like. So,
and that goes back to that karma thing that you were talking about a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I think it like also empowers them, because I think sometimes people that write bad reviews, they're kind of empowered by their anger, and they're not always. And it's good to be angry. We all need to get angry. You know, that's part of being uncontained. Like, but it's sometimes you want to channel your anger into something that's actually empowering, like whether it's empowering you or empowering a cause, instead of just lashing out and trying to hurt somebody's feelings. It's like we've seen how that goes culturally right now, and it's like it's not going to help anybody.
No, definitely not, man. All right, so before I get to the final question here, Scooter, where can people find you on the World Wide Web? Well, what's your social media, your website, your corner of the World Wide Web?
Sure, like, if you want to listen to the podcast, you can search in your podcast app for Sleep With Me Podcast, or you can go to our website, sleepwithmepodcast.com. Don't go to Sleep With Me.
Is that something completely different?
I think it's just a parked domain. I've been trying to. I don't think I can afford to buy it. So one day maybe I could dream. But yeah, sleepwithmepodcast.com. I'm at Dearest Scooter on Twitter and Instagram are the best places to get me.
All right, sounds good. And you can also access your Patreon through your website as well, correct?
Right.
Sleepwithmepodcast.com. All right, Scooter, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk to me today. It's been a blast. It is time for that one final question. Andrew Ackerman, A.K.A. Dearest Scooter, how do you live uncontained?
You know, I think I live uncontained by, one positive and negative trait is that I'm very stubborn. And I think that is one thing that's been an asset as I've been doing my show, is anytime I've gotten down or gotten fed up or had people on my case and trying to pull me down or whatever, I've been like, you know what, I'm just going to keep making the show, like, no matter what. So just trying to make the next show or set a date, like, okay, I want to get to episode 750 now, and then I want to get to episode 800, and I'm not going to stop no matter what, like, till I get to that number.
Yeah.
And staying stubborn and staying focused on a clear, concise, achievable goal. Like, I don't know. I want to make 1,000 episodes, but that's like pretty far off, a couple of years off in the future.
I hear that.
So it's a little dangerous. But so just being stubborn and focusing on a goal, and just doing that is one way I live uncontained. But it does also come with a cost. Like I have definitely overworked myself over the past years. Like I was working for the longest time a full-time job, and then working on the podcast like over 40 hours a week in addition to my job, and using my day job money or any extra money I could scrape together to keep the podcast going. And I've tried to slowly dial that in. I'm not the most balanced person, and I'm trying to get better at balancing my time and stuff.
Yeah.
But I've definitely been willing to sacrifice a lot of personal luxuries and personal time to build this thing. But it's because I believe in it. I believe it's like in the people it's helping fall asleep. And I also believe it's like, it's not always fun for me to make it. And maybe, I don't know if that's the case for your show, but there are times where you're like, I get to do this. Like when I remember sitting in my bedroom, like recording myself and recording fake commercials as a kid, and like, recording fake DJ stuff between songs. And so like that part is just really fun. And that like hearing from people like in like West Africa or like Iceland, that they listen to the podcast is like mind blowing. So yeah, I think I like live uncontained by just keeping going and being a little bit too stubborn and having unhealthy work habits sometimes, but trying to rein that in.
Hey man, that is awesome. And it's natural. Yeah, even with me, there's sometimes where it's like, yes, this is awesome. I can't believe I get to talk to these people about what they do, and and get free advice off of them by talking to them, asking them questions that I want to know. But then there's times where, it is work, where it's like I would rather go out, hang out with some friends, just, relax a little bit after work. But then, no, I have to get my show out. I got to do this editing. I got to do that. The dog will have to wait to go to the park. But yeah, so that's completely natural, and just the fact that you're pushing through, and obviously things are paying off. Once again, you can check him out on Sleep With Me podcast. See him live in Alameda every other Wednesday.
Every second Wednesday of the month.
Oh, every second Wednesday of the month. Don't go every other Wednesday, or else you might just miss it completely all the time.
I do personal one-on-one shows. It's $100,000 an hour. So if just in case, like,
all right, let's put that out there.
In case anybody's listening that's in that ballpark, I haven't had any clients yet, because it also includes no funny business. Keep your hands under the sheets. And I'll just tell you the story. But yeah, if you have that budget, you hit me up.
All right, man. That's cool. I was actually thinking about that. I was like, next thing after the live shows, you're just going to do one-on-one Sleep With Me bedtime stories. Yeah. Be like talking about... My favorite one still is one of the first ones that I listened to was the one with the alien bank robbers and pyramids and stuff like that at all. Like, that's the one that I always tell people about when I tell them about your show. I was like, it's so... abstract. It's interesting, but not too interesting to keep you awake, but also not too boring where you're like, dude, will this guy just, stop it? It's like, it's that perfect balance of interesting.
Thank you.
I did have interesting dreams when I listened to that episode, but it was definitely worth. On nights you can't fall asleep, you gotta put on Sleep With Me.
Yeah, it's
man.
like psychedelics without the hangover, ideally.
That's a good explanation right there. That's a good explanation.
And free. You don't even have to pay. Don't have to go. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. All right, man. I once again appreciate your time. Appreciate you meeting me here. Beautiful downtown Oakland, California.
Beautiful downtown Oakland, California at Calavera. And just talking with me and sharing some knowledge. Yeah, helping people sleep, man. Hopefully they made it to the end of this podcast.
Check. Anybody out who's out there?
Who's listening? If you're listening, message me at Uncontained Pod on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or also message Drew at
just
Sleep
say
With Me.
Limeade. That'd be the secret code word.
Yeah, secret code Limeade if you made it to the end, because that is what Drew is drinking right now, and I have a Modelo. So we'll roll with that. One final thing for you to do. Drew, will you do me the honor of signing off the show tonight?
But yeah, thank you so much for having me on. And if you're listening, keep going. Like whatever project you have, you're worth it. Keep going. And I'm Drew Ackerman, I make Sleep With Me podcasts, and I'm uncontained.
And I live uncontained.
Oh, I live uncontained. Keep
so
this
just
in. Don't edit this out.
When people say that, I have to leave it in. You know that. If you just throw in Dearest Scooter and I live uncontained.
I'm Dearest Scooter, and I live uncontained. This is how I put people to sleep. Because it's like, but it's like I think about like, what does it mean to live uncontained? Like, and then it makes me think of like a rabbit. Like, if your rabbit's uncontained, you better get it contained. But your rabbit might like some free-ranging rabbit space to be uncontained, but he's still generally contained. So normally I'm generally contained. But today, I live uncontained. Thank you.
And that does it for another episode of Uncontained. Thank you for listening, and thank you to Drew Ackerman, Dearest Scooter, whatever you want to refer to him as, for joining me on Uncontained, catching up. It's great to see what he's been able to accomplish in the last few years since I talked to him last. And don't forget to get a hold of us with #Limeade and let us know your feedback on the show. Also, please help spread the word about Uncontained. Tell a friend about it. Send them a link to the show, or just go ahead and subscribe for them on their podcast player of choice. They won't mind. And while you're at it, if you have any problem sleeping or just want to hear an interesting story, go ahead and subscribe to the Sleep With Me podcast as well. So thank you for listening once again. And if you would like to support the show, please leave a review in your favorite podcast player. Also, if you have some shopping to do, there is always the Amazon link at the top of the website page, uncontainedpod.com. All the social media, if you want to talk with us, uncontainedpod@gmail, uncontainedpod, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm there. Just hit me up, let me know, and I will continue on the thank you chain that Drew talks about in this episode. I'm your host, Aaron Static Render, and until next time, live uncontained.